Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us today. I'm Erin Neely Cox, the United States Attorney for the Northern District of Texas, and I'm joined by my colleague Jeff Boschek, Special Agent in charge of ATF's Dallas Field Division. Always very proud to stand shoulder to shoulder with Jeff in the fight against gun crime. I know that we all recall the day just over a year ago that a gunman wielding an AR-15 styled semi-automatic rifle opened fire on Interstate 20 in Midland, Texas. After shooting a DPS trooper, he went on, leaving more death in his wake. By the time the officers neutralized him, he had taken 7 innocent lives and wounded another 25 others. You can see the very gun that he used over here on the screen. Now, to the many who lost loved ones that day, and to those of us at the Department of Justice, this horrific and senseless act was doubly heartbreaking, given that we knew the shooter's mental capacity. He'd been adjudicated mentally unfit to possess a weapon, a fact that the NICS system had flagged in a previous attempt by the shooter to purchase a weapon. As you all know, the Midland, Odessa shooter was legally barred from possessing a weapon. It was in 2006 that a court confirmed his mental diagnosis, one that prevented him from purchasing a weapon. And in early 2014, the shooter attempted to purchase a handgun from a local sporting goods store in Odessa, Texas, and the system worked just as it was designed to work. When the store ran his information through the National Instant Criminal Background Check System, what we commonly refer to as NICS, it flagged his prohibited status and denied the sale. But tragically, 2.5 years later, the shooter was able to purchase a semi-automatic rifle from an unlicensed dealer of firearms who failed to verify through NICS that this purchaser was not eligible to purchase a weapon. I'm here to announce today that man who sold the Midland, Odessa shooter his gun, Marcus Anthony Brazil, has pleaded guilty to 2 federal crimes: dealing firearms without a license and falsifying a tax return. A little background, I want to go through just a little background before we get into the details of the plea. Federal law prohibits unlicensed sellers from engaging in the business of dealing in firearms. Engaging in the business is defined as repeatedly devoting time and attention to purchasing and reselling firearms for monetary gain. There's no specific legal threshold for the number of guns you have to sell. There's no specific amount of money you have to earn. But if you engage in a pattern of obtaining guns in order to resell them for a profit, you must be licensed, and importantly, you must run the purchasers through the background check system. Now, certainly federal law allows for law-abiding citizens to resell one-off weapons in the state that you live in without a license or a background check, in much the same way you could sell anything that you own. These kinds of sales are perfectly legal. Liquidating a private gun collection is also perfectly legal within the boundaries of the law and can be done without a license. What's not acceptable is the unlicensed dealing of guns for the purpose of making a profit. Now, in the plea papers that were unsealed today, Mr. Brazil admits that from 2014 to 2018, he was engaged, in fact, in the business of dealing firearms without a license. And he acknowledges that he sold one of those firearms to a prohibited person who then used that firearm to murder 7 Texans and wound 25 more in the shooting spree on Labor Day weekend. He also admits that he engaged in this conduct willfully, that is, knowing that his conduct was unlawful. According to the factual resume, in general, Mr. Brazil would purchase lower receivers, that is the gun's firing mechanism, from a dealer. Then he would manufacture a complete gun and sell the gun to interested buyers. He would offer that gun for sale in various ways, including online forums such as armslist.com, and then conduct the actual sales transaction in person, oftentimes in his garage or in the parking lot of a local sporting goods store. This is how the man who ultimately became the Midland, Odessa shooter bought his gun. But that wasn't the only gun that this defendant sold to a prohibited person. After the shooting, ATF launched a detailed investigation of all the firearm sales that Mr. Brazil conducted. And ATF, with the help of a number of law enforcement agencies, both local and federal, conducted an extensive investigation of the defendant's firearm sales. This included an analysis of bank records that showed he made substantial income off these transactions. He also admitted that his tax returns omitted this income, and that forms the basis of the tax count. Now, ultimately, for the weapons that we were able to trace, the investigation revealed that Mr. Brazil not only sold it to the Midland, Odessa shooter, but he in fact sold it to 4 prohibited persons: a convicted felon, a citizen of Mexico illegally in the United States, another person who was currently under a federal indictment, and the Midland, Odessa shooter. And this is exactly what the gun laws are designed to prevent: allowing guns to end up in the hands of people who have no business having, possessing, or transferring a gun. As the Brazil case makes clear, dealing firearms without a license is not an obscure, meaningless, technical violation. It is unlawful conduct that has very real-world impact and has potentially devastating results. What's so worrisome is, in this case, it's not about Mr. Brazil knowing that he sold the gun to prohibited persons. It's the fact that he has no way of knowing who he was selling to, much less prohibited persons, because he failed to do the background check. If you're a firearms dealer, whether you're selling from a brick and mortar store, online, or in your basement, you must ensure that a background check is run on your purchasers. And this process is not hard and it's not expensive. And ATF Special Agent in Charge Boshek will speak more to that in a moment. Our job is to enforce the nation's long-held gun laws, and I think this case represents the core of what we're trying to do: holding those accountable who break the law and sending the message to others that it is very important to prevent firearms from falling into the wrong hands, to stop bad actors before they can even pull the trigger. I want to note just 2 additional things. First of all, this prosecution is brought under Project Guardian, Attorney General Barr's signature initiative for violent crime reduction through gun crime prosecution. And I also want to note that we wish we were announcing this case in Lubbock. That's where this case was investigated. Our prosecutors in Lubbock, working alongside the very dedicated law enforcement agents, worked tirelessly on this case. And if it weren't for COVID and the safety reasons, we would be announcing this case in Lubbock. We want the Lubbock community to know that our folks there are doing what they can to make their community safer. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Jeff, and then we'll take questions.
Thank you, Aaron. Everybody's having a good day. I just want everybody to know, so August 31st of 2019 just seems like yesterday to me. What typically is a excited day in West Texas is the day before dove season out west. So people are typically excited that day, right, as they kick off their Labor Day weekend. Turned into a nightmare really quick. I remember sitting on my couch watching football here in Dallas and being called out and driving as fast as I could out to Odessa. And the look, that community, the citizens of Odessa, the victims' families, it's forever changed. It's much like the Austin bombing case a few years ago when we were down there, and you couldn't go anywhere in that community and not see the pain and the fear on the people's faces. And that's what I saw for that couple weeks in Odessa, and then move it on up to Lubbock. ATF is we take pride in keeping firearms out of the hands of prohibited persons. That's what we do. That's our mission, fighting violent crime with firearms with the United States Attorney's offices around the country. That's our primary focus. Typically, ATF has always looked at the possessor, right? We focused a lot on who ends up with the gun. We never really focused. We did it on occasion, but we've put a lot more focus into the circle of life of that firearm now. How did that firearm go from the manufacturer to how it ended up, whether it be in a murder on the street, a carjacking, whatnot? We've really taken a holistic approach to crime gun intelligence and trying to piece that whole puzzle together. That's how this brought us to Mr. Brazil, is tracing that firearm and tracking back from when it was recovered on the street that day in Odessa to how it got there, and that's how we got to Mr. Brazil. Mr. Brazil knew the laws. There's no doubt in my mind that he knew the laws. Mr. Brazil would give his customers bills of sale to include that would ask if they were prohibited persons. The 9 questions that we ask if you go into any kind of FFL, federal firearms license, anywhere in the United States, he was asking these same questions of his customers that he was meeting online. The only difference was he wasn't licensed. What he was doing was he was trying to make a profit getting around the system of having to do a NICS background check. Becoming an FFL is easier than getting your driver's license at age 16 in the state of Texas. I know this for a fact. It takes months for 16-year-olds to get their driver's license, the training, everything that they go through to get a driver's license. I can tell you for a fact that once your application is complete and correct and pushed to ATF, you're going to get your license in probably 2 to 3 months. That system it's intact and it works well. Mr. Brazil knew that there was a system for this and he chose not to do it. It costs $200, so it's a nominal fee. It's $200 to get your license and do things legally the right way. You know, once you become the FFL, you have to do a NICS background check. I believe that's part of the reason why these people sought out people, or why people that are prohibited, they look for folks like Mr. Brazil, because they're not doing background checks, because a lot of them are prohibited persons. So they try and skirt the laws of the United States of America to obtain firearms. Using NICS is not hard for FFLs. If Mr. Brazil had become a registered federal firearms licensee and run NICS checks, it would not have prohibited any of his business. It's very quick. The e-check system online, 70% of gun owners, they get an immediate response to proceed with the firearm purchase. People that get delayed, typically there's a reason why those are delayed or denied for your criminal histories. If you're selling a private gun, if you're selling your private collection, you can also take it a step further and go to an FFL and have that FFL run the individual that's purchasing your gun for a nominal fee of $25, $30, $35. Most FFLs will do that for you. Keep the guns out of prohibited persons' hands. This kind of case is rare. As a special agent in charge here in Dallas, I think this is the first one, especially this magnitude, that we've prosecuted in the Dallas Field Division that has such far-reaching intent behind it. I'm proud of the team, proud of the U.S. Attorney's Office. It takes some prosecutorial fortitude, if that's even a thing, to do cases like this. These aren't easy. And AUSA Hague and the team up in Lubbock and the team here, led by U.S. Attorney Neely Cox, is one of a kind in the United States. There's no district in America that takes firearm crime more seriously. Don't tell some of your friends I said that. Than the Northern District of Texas here in Dallas. So I'm proud to be part of this team. Proud of the Lubbock Police Department, Federal Bureau of Investigation, the IRS, HSI, everybody else that helped us with this investigation. Because although it doesn't seem huge, right? It's nominal counts. There was a lot of work that went behind this, a lot of investigation, a lot of research to find all the information we need on Mr. Brazil. So, Aaron, thank you for the partnership. We couldn't have done it without U.S. Attorney's Office. So thank you.
Okay, I'm not sure that we have any questions, but we'll take, if you have any, happy to.
I'm wondering if Mr. Brazil is from North Texas, or what the tie is.
I know that he's been a resident of Lubbock for some time. Jeff, do you know?
I'd say he might be from South Houston area, but I'm not sure.
Okay.
Yeah, we can get back to you on that, though.
You mentioned 3 other people. Have any of them been captured by any chance? Or are they still out there?
You mean the guns to the prohibited persons?
Yes, to the prohibited person.
What I will say is we're a little bit limited into how much detail we can give you on that answer, but in general, the ATF's policy is to go after and seize or have those guns surrendered. So, anything else?
Sorry, one more question.
Oh, sure.
And do you believe anything from this case would help with future cases by any chance?
Well, my hope, and I'll let Jeff answer that too, my hope is that this case, accomplishes 2 things. One, it's to, hold people accountable for the knowing violations of important laws, important federal laws. And number 2, I hope that it sends a message to other, persons that are actually engaging in the business of dealing firearms, lets them know how important the background checks are, and lets them know how easy they are, and that there will be very serious consequences if they skirt the law. Jeff, do you want to address it?
No, nothing further. I think in March, U.S. Attorney and I did a press conference here as well on a couple of cases out of gun shows, some very similar fact patterns. It's not hard to get a license, and I think that's the key to trying to get this out to people that are selling guns, that are engaged in the business, is that do it the right way, and you'll have no problems. We won't be we won't be announcing this if they did it the right way, which isn't hard.
Good. All right. Thanks, everyone. Appreciate it.